2018 after attending a Dr. David Johnson lecture. They have now built almost 40 bioreactors since then and continue to build them throughout Texas and New Mexico. Dr. David Johnson and I'll stress the importance of building healthy soil by increasing biodiversity and by propagating natural processes. We are dedicated to working with farmers. They are dedicated to working with farmers to promote the building of healthy soils through the practice of the 5 principles of soil stewardship, especially increasing biodiversity. Matt is also vending, right?
Yes.
So go check out his table. And if you don't have an opportunity to ask your question at the end, I'm sure there is so much more to be learned over at the vendor booth as well. So now I will leave it to you. And please wait if you have a question for me to come to you with the mic so we can catch your question for the recording. All yours. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin. Again, my name is Matt Batchelder. I'm so grateful to be here. This is actually my fourth year to vend here at the Seed Exchange, and it's a great event. I'm so grateful to actually be able to present. Raise your hand if you are familiar with Johnson Sioux Compost. Okay, a few of us here. Okay, good. So just to get an idea of where I should begin and how we should proceed with this, Dr. David Johnson began his work as a microbiologist in the engineering department at New Mexico State University. His task was to find a way to break down dairy farm manure. And so through a long process with his wife involved, Hui Chun Su, they designed these bioreactors to break down essentially manures and any kind of brown materials, nitrogen-based materials. So if you've ever have a chance to get on YouTube, Dr. David Johnson has a number of lectures. They usually last about an hour. One lecture, I tell you, is all it takes. Dr. David Johnson, he takes you through the process of life on Earth, showing you the different environments that we've experienced and how we've reached a peak environment in the last 100,000 years. And that's been a reason for the explosion of biodiversity on the planet. And obviously, we're in a different stage right now, but at the same time, our understanding of the world of the microbiology is beginning to change. We're in the last 15 years, we've got more and more information about what's underground, and microbes. So we're finding that fungus is a key ingredient in all of our processes. We've identified up to 3 to 5% of all species. We're not even sure how many fungal species exist. Has anyone ever seen the movie Fantastic Fungi? There's different, you can pronounce it fungi or fungi. I guess Webster's dictionary says they're different. But there's a movie out there I highly recommend, Hollywood movie, Fantastic Fungi. It's really fantastic. I mean, it's a great movie. And it talks about how everything is interrelated and talk about, instead of kingdoms, how we should more refer to them as kingdoms. How all living species are interrelated. And so seeing things differently is not separate kingdoms, but how that we're all connected. We're beginning to understand, we talked about the microbiome. And just to share with you the last speaker, Chaitanya, I'm going to be going on his coattails because they have a much better understanding of a lot of the biological processes. I studied geosciences, so the history of life on Earth I have an understanding of. But current species and that type of thing, I will definitely refer to Chaitanya. They did a great presentation. And so I will be adding on to this. What I'm creating, this Johnson Sioux compost, it's just an addition. It's an additive. I wouldn't change anything that Chaitanya is doing except possibly adding a little bit of these microbes every time you make a tea. We like to call it an extract, because you don't need to heat it, or you don't really need to aerate it. Ideally, you just want to dilute it and then apply it as quickly as possible. And we'll get into that a little later. So how to develop Johnson Sioux compost. Dr. David Johnson, again, did research, and he went into the rainforest, because that's where we get the largest biomass production, right? And he began to study the soils of the rainforest. And if you've been and you see there's layers and layers of leaves, and the leaves are a key component to propagate the fungal species. And one of the first times I vended here, one of the individuals I was speaking with, they said, "Oh, so you're a microbe farmer." And I'd never really thought about that, but what I'm realizing is that, yes, we all need to become propagators of microbes, because we're learning about the gut biome. We're learning how all different aspects. Dr. Johnson will tell you that humans are made up of, let me get this right, 10 trillion human cells. But now we're realizing we have 100 trillion bacteria cells on our body at this moment. One of the individuals I follow, Nicole Masters, she wrote For the Love of Soil. She says, so in the middle of the night when I'm craving that chocolate bar, it's not me that's craving the chocolate bar, it's the bacteria. But so we really need to understand how important bacteria and fungus is in our daily lives. It's everywhere. Every time we take a breath, we're taking in fungal species. Fungal spores are everywhere. Okay, obviously more in swamp and tropical regions, but they're still here. They're on every blade of grass. They're on every piece of fruit, obviously, every pine needle. So again, trying to understand fungal dominance is definitely a process we need to practice. So first step, obviously looking at the current state of agriculture, they say we have 60 harvests left. This is kind of, it's profound to really think about. I doubt a lot of us will be here, but our children and grandchildren will be here. And so it's something we definitely want to take into consideration. So what can we do? Well, so obviously we have overtoxification, all the additives we're adding to our soils, monocropping, no cover crops. We're all familiar with that. And a lot of the food that we're getting grown industrial, it's grown in dirt. It's not microbial rich, so it doesn't have a lot of nutrients. And so we're having to consume more of these foods because they're not nutrient dense. Okay, so the 5 principles of soil stewardship. I learned these through New Mexico Department of Agriculture. They have adopted these 5 principles. Is anyone familiar with the basic principles? Some use 6 principles. There's different versions of it. I think they use the one that Gabe Brown used in his book, Dirt to Soil. He defined the 5 principles very well in that book, Dirt to Soil. I highly recommend that. Anyway, New Mexico Department of Agriculture has a program, and they have grant money, thousands of dollars of grant money for farmers and ranchers that are using even just one of these. So there are states that are trying to get more involved in healing our land. It's all about a healing process, right? Because of what we've done in the past, whether it's grazing techniques or agricultural techniques. There's things that we've done that we haven't killed the fungus, obviously. We've just kind of pushed them away from where we work. And so our job now is to study nature, be students of nature, and try and propagate the fungal species. So first of all, we have to keep the soil covered. The sun and the wind destroy fungus. Yes, did you have a question? Okay, number 1 is keep soil covered. Okay, so ideally when you're even a rancher, you don't want to be able to see your soil. You want to have something covering it, whether it's plants, living plants, or even dead plants, or some type of mulch, okay? When we get into larger scales, large ranches, that's a little more difficult to do, but the whole idea is that concept of keeping soil covered, okay? If you want to go explore your soil, you should have to dig through something to get to it. You shouldn't be able to see it, okay? Again, the sun is a huge detriment to fungus. Okay, number 2, minimize soil disturbance and external inputs. Okay, so obviously tilling. Tilling is acceptable. There's things we can do. There's different types of implements we can use to not do so much tilling, but it's still okay to break the soil a couple of inches. The mycelium networks, the fungal networks, are usually 4 to 6 inches deep. So you can break the soil there on the surface and still not have too much detriment. But once we start getting into that 6-inch level to a foot, we're really affecting the networks that were pre-existing, okay? Number 3, maximize biodiversity. And remember when I talked about kingdoms, we need to maximize biodiversity of all kingdoms, and especially microbe biodiversity, okay? So it's not just fungal and bacterial species, we need to include other species as well. I'll be referring back to these 5 principles because this is the foundation. Once we start practicing these principles, then we're propagating nature and we're becoming students of nature, and we're not trying to control it. Once we stop trying to control nature and we see how to learn from it and promote it, then things are going to change for all of us. It really. Dr. Johnson is not even a farmer, and with his field trials, he was able to produce almost 1 inch of soil per year. Now, he didn't have water restrictions, so that helped tremendously. But again, this was not a farmer, but he constantly planted. You have to constantly be seeding. Okay, that's the key, is maintaining living roots, which brings me to number 4, maintain living roots. Okay, so if we till our whole field, then we've destroyed any kind of native grasses that might have been propagating or growing well. So we need to be aware of that. There's also strip tilling, where we don't have to till the whole field, we do strips. So there's different ways we can minimize our disturbance. And when I mention external inputs, let me back up real quick on number 2, minimize disturbance and inputs. We're referring to our nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Nature didn't have someone applying these things before we were here, right? These soils were made by ungulates for thousands of years. The bison roamed this continent for thousands of years, making these soils that supposedly were 10 feet deeper than they are now, if we can imagine. And so they didn't come with their nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. What did the bison leave? Because they would take a lot, would they not? The bison took their share, because farmers will tell you, but I take so much produce out of that field, I've got to put something back. Well, what did the bison give? They gave saliva, they gave urine, they gave feces. They didn't have much more to offer, but they sure took a lot of the grasses, did they not? And so we need to understand that the natural processes allow for that. And once we get the fungus and plants working together, they're pulling the elements out of the sky. I mean, they're doing an exchange. The fungus wants the carbon. You realize, we know plants are taking in the carbon, the CO2. 70% of that is going into the ground. The plants don't want the carbon. They want the NPK and many other elements, right? So they do an exchange with the fungus. They say, okay, we'll give you the carbon, but you need to give us these other things. And so there's a direct exchange there. Nicole Masters has a great description. It's like when the pizza delivery guy comes and delivers your pizza, you got to give something in return for that pizza. And so it's that kind of concept of a symbiotic relationship and exchange there. So then maintaining living roots. We need to constantly be planting cover crop species. Another individual I followed, Masanobu, I have trouble with his name, Masanobu Fukuoka. Anybody familiar with Mr. Fukuoka? He wrote The One Straw Revolution. And he also wrote Sowing Seeds in the Desert. And I highly recommend both these books. They're for us. They're scientific books, but at the same time, they offer an opportunity. And he wrote the first one Straw Revolution, in 78, the late 70s, and he talked about microbial diversity. So we already understood these concepts, but we weren't learning them in schools, right? You still can't hardly learn about these concepts in universities. Dr. David Johnson is no longer working at New Mexico State University. He's been defunded. He was also at California State University and is no longer working there. He works for a nonprofit. It's called Cruces Creations down in Las Cruces. So just to understand what we're dealing with, this is how this information is going to be getting out. So back to the maintaining living roots. We want to there are native seeds all in this ground waiting for an opportunity. They're waiting for the right conditions for them to thrive. And so we want to propagate those. We want to promote the natural grasses. We don't need to tear them out to then grow other species. We want to grow with them. Okay, and again, the One Straw Revolution will really give you an idea of planting in the winter. We still want to plant our winter cover crops, right? We need things to come up as soon as it starts warming up, Okay, and then last, not least, 5, integrate animals. And this is kind of an interesting concept because, we think of ungulates, we think of our cows and our sheep and goats, but we also need to know that worms are a keynote species. And so this is a vermicompost that we're creating. And so it's important to see that even worms are also a part of that integrating animals. Not all of us are going to have ungulates to work our land. But I have this vision, and I know people have done this. I've learned about sharing animals. There's not a reason in the world we couldn't borrow a couple of animals from our neighbor who does have animals to come graze on our land and leave some of that saliva and urine. It's because there's bacterial, there's microbial life in that urine and that saliva that the plants are working with also. Okay, so we need to be aware of their purpose, and obviously different grazing practices will help promote that also. So anyway, I put a lot of stress in the soil stewardship principles because this is the foundation on how we can begin to propagate our soils, okay? So then why Johnson Sioux compost, okay? Well, a lot of us are probably experts at this, right? I did not claim to be an expert at compost, but I am starting to understand our relationships and our connectedness to all living things. And so the reason we want to do this is because, again, the fungus is here, it's all around us, but it's being negatively affected by our tilling, by our inputs that we're adding to our insecticides, our fungicides, our herbicides. These are having a negative impact on our fungus species. So that's why this will speed up that process. I've actually got a sample here. I'll pass it around. Dr. Johnson says you only need 1 to 2 pounds per acre of this stuff. You use it as a seed inoculant. So I'll just pass it on. Notice how there's already moisture collecting. It's living. This is a living compost. It'll actually perish within a few days if it's not taken care of. So we water it daily. You can open it up and take a look at it. You can smell it. This is just made from leaves, so it doesn't have any harsh smells or anything like that in that respect. So it's a compost made from leaves, and it takes a year to make. It's a year process. It needs to go through all 4 seasons, okay? How do we make it? We build these bioreactors, simple little structures on pallets. You're going to find we use pallets a lot in this process. Essentially, it's a cage that we fill with saturated washed leaves, okay? And then how do we apply it? Every time you plant, you should always plant with a living compost. Again, you don't need much. Every teaspoon has millions of species and millions of, not millions of species, but millions of cells or spores of bacteria. So you don't need much. I'm adding a teaspoon per gallon. I'll add a handful, a quarter cup per 5-gallon bucket. All you want to do is dilute it and then apply it. If you have larger seeds, you can mix it just add water with a pancake batter, and then you mix your larger seeds that way. Using a seed drill, there's different techniques. You'd want to actually dry it. Dr. Johnson recommends planting the seeds wet if possible. When you're planting by hand, that's easy, but if you're using machinery like a seed drill, you have to dry it so it won't clog up your seed drills. Okay? So here's our little farm. You can't really see it very well. If you come by my booth in the main office, our main building there, I've got some pictures. You can get an idea. But so we've built a number of bioreactors, and I grew up in Houston, and so my buddy's got a few acres outside of Houston, and that's where we're doing most of the propagating of the fungus, and because it's a swampy area, and so you got a larger diversity there. And so since you don't need much, we can ship it to you. We ship priority so you can get it by the end of the week. Because ideally you want to get it when you're ready to plant and apply some every time you plant. Of course, you don't need much, but nowadays, anytime you plant something, you need to think, wow, I wish I had some living compost, okay? That's what I'm trying to get you to think of, okay? Okay, so how to develop it. First, you build a little bioreactor. I'll show you the steps of that. We fill it with washed leaves. You say, well, why do you wash the leaves? Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, it helps you sort it because you tend to have sticks in there, cat poop, trash. So when you wash it, this allows you to separate it a little better. Also, if there's any dirt or debris on the leaves, you can clean it off. You're going to be looking at this, you can get this stuff tested in labs, and so they're looking at it under a microscope, and Dr. Johnson says that he can tell if you've washed the leaves because it'll clog up the process if you don't, and so he can see the dirt under the microscope. So you want to wash them and try and get them as clean as possible. Here's the key ingredient is you want to water it daily. Okay, we have to maintain moisture levels of 70%. If you know this compost that you're looking at, a sample, it's very moist. You should be able to take a handful of it and squeeze it and get a few drops of water out of it, okay? And then you apply the extract to a large environment. Oh, and also with the watering, keeping it from freezing. And you know, that's a difficult challenge here where we are. That's one reason I'm doing it down in Southeast Texas. But it can be done. Dr. Johnson recommends doing it in a root cellar. Obviously, not many of us are going to take this down to our root cellar and wash leaves. Okay, I get it. But there's these geodesic domes. It doesn't take up much space. You can even do a small one on a small pallet. Okay. Any type of greenhouse would be beneficial. I'm going to show you a way. Up here, what we do is you can do multiple layers. And then you stuff the outer layer with straw as an insulated barrier. We got to get it through those couple months of January, February when it's so darn cold here, you know. And again, it's a greenhouse. There's a guy in Santa Fe, he dug a hole and put a greenhouse on top. So just things to think about, because here's the deal. We all need to be making these. You know, Chaitanya, the last speaker, mentioned that a lot of these things you don't need to buy in stores. And I think that's one reason Dr. Johnson got defunded, because our state ag universities are funded by the chemical companies, and they're controlling our research. And so we need to be aware when someone comes up and says, hey, this doesn't cost any money, you know, you can do this. And just to give you an idea, you know, we can get pallets almost anywhere, right? You just use some remesh that you can get at any hardware store, some landscaping fabric, a few nails. It doesn't take much at all to build these. And then the material you're putting in is waste product for most of us. They're leaves. I go to Houston, and they have a program. They have to put all their leaves in compostable bags. They put them out on the street corner, and the city comes and picks them up. Well, I get in front of the city truck, and I load my truck up. And so I have plenty of leaves at my disposal. Someone asked, well, are they organic? And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know where you'd find organic leaves to begin with, right? Especially not in the city. Maybe an organic orchard, I suppose, but then you're going to be limited. But here's the deal. What we're learning is when you get a lot of different species of microbes together, they begin functioning differently. Like when you get a group of humans together, we can perform more functions than one person, right? And so they call it quorum sensing, where you get these microbes working together. And their job is to break down any compound on the surface of the earth and make it accessible to plants, right? So they're saying they're even taking some of these fungal spores, oyster mushrooms, and they're putting them on a pile of oil. And they come back weeks later or whatever, and the oil's gone. And the oyster mushrooms are going like crazy. Okay, we need to understand fungus's job is to break these things down. So sure, these leaves are not organic, but at the same time, we're trying to propagate these fungus and bacteria. They're going to break that, whatever it is, down into its basic components anyway. So I like to have faith in the idea that sure, we live in a very toxic world, but if we propagate these species, these different microbes, and again, I don't know all the different names of the species. It's more of just being a student of nature and propagating nature. Okay, the species will come, they're here. Dr. Johnson did these experiments in Las Cruces, New Mexico, a very dry, low elevation desert, and he was finding bacteria that we thought were only on Antarctica, okay? These little critters can get around, they're everywhere, all right? So we just need to build homes for them. That's what these bioreactors are. It's home and shelter. It's shelter and food for them, okay? Everything but clothing. Okay, so then we apply the extract to our target environment. Again, when planting with seeds, there's different ways. Small seeds, obviously, you're going to do a little differently. You're going to make an extract and spray it into your furrow. Ideally, you want to get the extract into the ground and cover it. We got to hide it from the sun and the wind. Okay? If you already have pre-existing orchards, we're injecting, this is a termite injector. We can inject around the crown of our fruit trees, okay, and get it into the ground around the root systems and get them, because as soon as they find living roots, they begin working with the living root. So that's why you want to attach it to seeds as you plant, because as soon as that seed, that root comes out of that seed, the fungal species begin to work with it, okay? So this is just one technique of pre-existing orchards that you can apply this stuff as. Okay, let's see, what else? Okay, so sizing. I've got just a little small one, a little household situation here. Dr. Johnson, he's got a little 20-minute video on how to build these. I recommend getting online and doing a little research on Dr. David Johnson. Again, his videos are very informative. He goes into a little detail that I don't necessarily do. I've made a few slight changes to my bioreactors. But so again, you can do a small scale here, or you can do a larger scale, a larger pallet. But that's really the only difference in size. This would be a small scale. The larger one is you use 5-foot remesh. It's called 6x6 remesh. Wherever they pour concrete, they use this stuff. So you can get it anywhere. The whole idea is to be able to build these anywhere in the world. If you have leaves, and also you can use wood chips or straw. You want it to be dead material, dead plant material, okay? I really prefer leaves, and they're saying oak leaves are really they've got a lot of different fungal species attached to them. So the larger scale, Dr. Johnson, what I've found and what we're finding is you can produce up to 500 pounds of compost in one of these bioreactors. Sure.
I read that, there's living things in weeds, like there's
Oh, wait.
bugs that are wintering over.
Here we go.
I had read recently that there's bugs that are wintering over in leaves, butterfly eggs, and that you shouldn't even disturb leaves until like maybe May. So it's kind of, in one respect, you're talking about composting for the soil, but in other respect, maybe you're killing some insects that are living in the leaves through the winter. What do you think about that?
Wow, that's a good point. And so living in a more rural community where there's not so much cleaning up of yards and whatnot, I could see that's an issue. So I'm not sure I have a solution to that, except maybe start building them in the spring. Since it makes sense also, or in May even, because if it takes almost a year to make it, it usually becomes ready between 9 and 10 months. It gets better with age. Okay, you'll increase diversity with time, up to 14, 15, 16 months. But up to 9 or 10 months, you've got a really good, rich material ready. So that would be springtime. And that's ideally when you want to compost. So I'm still trying to figure this out. There is no exact story or science to this. We're still trying to understand. But one thing that when I was building them, and I built one recently in northern New Mexico, we built it in the fall because all the leaves fell. We had all these leaves. And so we built one in the fall. Well, it came ready the following fall, but we weren't really doing a whole lot of planting. There weren't people doing a lot of planting. So we had all this compost. And it was built it for a friend. It wasn't for a business thing. But so we really didn't have an opportunity to share it, and we had to keep it through the winter. And we didn't do a very good job of that. And it freezes, and it really has a negative impact on the fungal species and fungal propagation. So these are things to think about. Ideally, you do want it ready coming in the spring so you can spread it. So yes, that would be one solution around here. Again, I've been gathering my leaves in the inner city, Houston, so they're already going to be shredded or something to become mulch for the city program. So I'm either keeping it out of landfill or I'm keeping it from being shredded in that respect. So even just washing them, might not even be damaging some of these the insects. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so the two basic size, and again, you can produce up to 500 pounds per bioreactor. And if you think about it, if it only takes 1 to 2 pounds per acre, you're looking at a half a square mile of land that you could treat with one of these bioreactors, okay? So that's why I'm really into these workshops, because we all need to be building these. They're not hard. And we need to propagate these microbes and get them back into our soils. Okay, that's one way to turn the sand back into soil, is we got to bring it to life. And the one way we could do that is to propagate the life and apply it every time we plant. Dr. Johnson says, ideally, once you figure this out, once you apply the 5 principles, you only need to do it once, right? Because even like Chaitanya said, they're replicating every 15 to 20 minutes. This happens really fast. We can make changes really fast, okay? We need to realize that we have that ability that these things are propagating really quickly. So changes will happen. So keep that in mind, okay? All right, so I got some details on this. I've got this, I can email you. We're doing a little drawing, so if you stop by our booth and enter a little drawing, I'll get your email address and I can send you this little presentation so you can get all the details. It's just the gory details on what it takes to build. I was going to give a basic demonstration, but I wasn't able to bring my truck, and so I didn't bring all the materials I was going to show you. But one thing he uses is this is just a shade cloth. I don't recommend it. First of all, we're trying to get away from plastics, right? And these nylons are just shredding all over our land. But some people are using a burlap, okay? Dr. Johnson recommends a 4-ounce landscaping fabric, or 5-ounce landscaping fabric. Well, you go to the hardware stores and they don't usually have that. But if you get online and you look, Amazon has a 4 or a 6-ounce. I recommend here with the colder environments to use a heavier weight landscaping fabric, like a 6-ounce fabric. It's not cheap, but if you don't need much. Like a standard one uses 13 feet to go around, and then you have a base, which is a couple of square feet, 4 square feet, and then a top, which is, so you're not using much of this at all to build one bioreactor. And again, the whole idea is to share. We're sharing here. We're learning to share with each other, and because you're going to build a bioreactor, and you're going to create all this compost, and you're not going to be able to use it all unless you've got a 1,000-acre ranch. We need to start sharing it with our neighbors and whatnot. So anyway. So the landscaping fabric, I recommend to hire a heavier, duty one. And so what we're doing is you build an outer cage, and you're just tacking it down with, staples, any kind of wire staples or fence staples. Okay, and you're just tacking the wire down to your pallet, and then you do a circle just with about 3 inches between, and I would line both of these with that fabric. So it will take a little more fabric, but again, if we take extra care here, you won't be so disgusted in January and February when you can't hardly water it because it's so darn cold here. Because it's going to happen. It's going to have to go into some dormant stage because there's no way we can keep it from freezing, right? That's really not possible here at this elevation in January. So having an insulation barrier, and you just stuff it with straw, okay, the outer layer, and then you'll fill the inner layer with your leaves, with your washed leaves, okay. So again, this is just the gory details on the supplies, and then whether you're doing a small one or a large one, I'd like to show you. Here's how to cut the pallet. So Dr. Johnson, what he recommends, you'll see on his videos, is you cut circle holes, 4-inch holes in the pallet, and you put these 4-inch PVC pipes. And the reason you're doing that is you don't want your pile of leaves to be any further than 12 inches from ambient temperature, ambient air, from fresh air. Okay, the whole idea is fungus needs some good airflow. So we're essentially recreating the rainforest floor 5 feet tall, okay? And it's just a pile of washed leaves, or your wood chips, or even straw if you have dry straw. And so the tubes allow you to keep the airflow going throughout the pile. I'm actually I'm making a donut. And so for us up here in these colder climates, you're essentially going to do 3. You're going to do one small a tube out of your cage, and that's going to be your airflow. And then you'll do your main cage where you'll fill it. And I'll show you. I've got another photograph that I can show you. And that's what you'll fill your leaves with. And then you'll have one further ring to stuff with straw to then have your insulation. Again, if you have access to straw bales in the wintertime, if you can't get it in a greenhouse, I consider surrounding the thing with hay bales. Just getting through January and February, right? Those 2 rough months where the fungus is going to have a hard time. Because ideally we want to water it daily. It doesn't take more than a gallon of water, and if we have to do it by hand, that's the dream, to at least try and maintain some moisture levels. Again, we're doing the best we can here at this elevation because we're trying to keep it from freezing. Yes? Wait.
If you can't get leaves and you're going to use the wood chips or the straw,
Yep.
do you also rinse them before putting them into your
Yes,
bioreactor?
yes. And I'll show you a picture of that. Yes. I've got that here in a second. But so here's the holes cut and the basic setup. Again, I can get you access to this. Boy, these pictures are not any good. Let me just hold this up. So here's our better picture of our farm in South Texas, Southeast Texas. Again, you can see the pipes in one of the bioreactors here to hold place. You only keep those pipes in for a few days. The pile will settle, and then you can pull the pipes out. So here is the basic set. I know this is not a very good picture. I'll pass this around. But what I want you to see is here's a basic bioreactor. It's just on a pallet. It's your cage. So in South Texas, I don't have to worry so much about freezing, right? So I just got the single cage here. And then what I set up is a little, essentially it's like scaffolding. I use ladders or sawhorses. And then what you do is you tilt a wheelbarrow, right? So you tilt it above. I've got an old jacuzzi tub. Any kind of wash basin you can use. Dr. Johnson, he uses the old the cement, the plastic cement mixer thing. But so I've got an old jacuzzi tub that my buddy had, and that's what I use to wash my leaves. Okay, so I fill this up with water, and now I've got old compost, and so I inoculate the water also. I'll put a handful of my compost into that. So as I'm washing my leaves, I'm inoculating them also. I'm already spreading bacteria on all the leaves. The deal is we're trying to wash them and saturate the leaves. We want to make sure they're good and wet, especially in this more arid climate. And he also says we want to crack them. We want to have little cracks. He has some ideas. Again, we're trying to keep this simple, right? But even driving over your leaves or anything to get little cracks, because then the cracks allow the bacteria and fungus to get in there and start breaking down the leaves faster. So what I do is I'm washing them by hand. I got my water trough, my jacuzzi tub. I put some compost in there. I dump a bag of leaves. And then I literally scrunch them. I push them down, get it all in there, covered in the water. And as I'm doing that, I'm just squeezing and trying to crack the leaves a little bit. And then I'm picking out sticks. Most of the cat poop will float to the surface. You can get that out. And then all you're doing is you're gathering the leaves out of the water and putting it into the wheelbarrow. And then the inoculated water will then pour back into your water trough, okay? So then you fill your wheelbarrow, and as that's draining, then you put another bag into your water container, and you scrunch them and get them nice and wet. And by the time you get that settled, then you're ready to move the leaves from the wheelbarrow. Your washed leaves are ready. They're beautiful. They're cleaned. There's no sticks, minimal sticks, no cat poop. And then you take those leaves and you put them in. You can either put them in a 5-gallon bucket. I usually am standing on the scaffolding because the 5 feet's too tall to do it from the ground. I'm a couple feet off the ground and I'll reach into the wheelbarrow and just put it in. It can take up to 1,000 pounds of leaves. Okay, it's a process. It can take up to a day to fill a big one. You just do it one day. You fill it once. You do not keep adding material. You fill it once and you are done. Okay, yes. How much time? 5 minutes. Okay, so once you fill this, what you do is you let it sit for 2 weeks. It's going to go through a thermophilic stage. You'll be amazed, the leaves, as soon as they're saturated and they get bunched together like that with good airflow, that fungus just starts breaking it down. So it's going to reach temperatures 130, 140, 150 degrees for the first 2 weeks or so. If you use the pipe method from the videos, as you pull them out, they'll be warm after a couple of days. They'll be really warm. You want it to go through that phase, and then after 2 weeks, then you add worms. I'm just going to the bait shop and buying worms. Someone was talking about the different types of worms. You know, the red wigglers and night crawlers. It's good to get a variety, okay? And you know, people are talking about non-native species and stuff. Hey, we're trying to promote all species right now. We cannot control non-native species. So let's just make sure that we get, the night crawlers will go deeper, they're gonna hide, and the red wigglers will go more to the surface. So have a variety of the worms. And he says add up to 100 worms per a big batch. So that's usually about 3 little canisters of the fishing worms, okay? And then you're done your you're watering with, I just use a soaker hose, or they have, you know, the Rainbird little sprinklers. You get a couple of these sprinkler heads on there. So we just need to saturate the surface, get a little sprinkle on there again with a soaker hose for 3 to 5 minutes, a gallon of water till you see it dripping out of the bottom of the pallet. Once you see the water dripping here, then you've saturated the pile well enough. You're doing that once a day, okay? Trying to maintain that moisture level of 70%, okay? Now, within 6 to 8 months, that pile is going to come down from 5 feet tall to maybe 2 feet tall, and you'll have this black, rich material like in that bag. And it's ready by 8 or 9 months. But if you can, the longer you wait, the better. You know, 12 up to 14 months, you're getting an increase in diversity. Anyway, that's a lot of information. I know I shared my video or my slides were not very good, but I've got a website and it's got access to the videos. And go on YouTube. Dr. Johnson has videos there because we all need to be building these and sharing the word. We need to propagate microbial life and become students of nature, okay? I don't have much time for questions, but please, anything.
Is there a certain
Oh, thank you.
is there a certain height that you want with your cage?
No, it
Because
doesn't matter.
It said 5 feet, but like for some of us, it's hard to get that much leaves.
Right. No, if you're doing it just for on a smaller scale, yeah, the 4-foot goat fencing is good. You want to make sure it's sturdy enough because as you pile it on, it's going to start expanding. So that's why the 6x6 remesh works pretty well because it's really sturdy. But goat fencing still works well enough if you do a small one, if you don't do a really fat one. Okay. So yeah, we don't need the 5 foot. You can do lower, even 3 foot. Okay. Maybe do that a little wider on a larger pallet. Okay. Yeah. So the size doesn't necessarily matter. It's the airflow, keeping it within 12 inches from the ambient air. Yes.
I've got some biochar at home. Would this be a great inoculant?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I did not mention that. Biochar is also housing and food for these microbes. They love it. So if you can get access to any biochar and mix it in, you just sprinkle it in as you're layering your leaves, okay? None of this needs to be much, and none of it needs to be an exact science, okay? Follow your heart and keep the KISS method and just trying to, again, propagate microbes. We're just learning how to do this. This is new science. Oh, and real quick, we need to be looking at microscopes. We need to be getting our soil sampled. We need to start building community labs. We need to become community scientists, okay? We need to understand this and support each other. And so I bought a microscope. I'm trying to build a lab, but it's a challenge and trying to get people to understand how we need to start looking at the smaller things to see, because you'll start seeing all these beautiful creatures crawling around, and you wouldn't be amazed. The flagellates, the cilia, the nematodes, there's all these creatures that we can see now under a microscope, and watching them eat each other and it's neat to we're seeing stuff. So again, if you have any questions, I've got a booth. I'm here till tomorrow afternoon. Thank you so much for your interest. I'm really thankful. Thank you for your time. Really, thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yes.
And also just to piggyback on the biochar, that is our demonstration tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And that biochar maker is also a Johnson Sioux compost maker. So there he is. And so there will be a lot more information there. We've got all sorts of awesome information on our compost makers, compost tea. Che, if you have any more questions, find this guy. If you find any more questions, find Matt Batchelder at his booth, and you can better booth as well.